Have you ever stopped to wonder why life feels like it's built on contradictions? Why, at times, we seem to swing between moments of joy and sorrow, light and darkness, as if one cannot exist without the other? This isn't just by chance, it's the powerful pull of the law of polarity. This universal law tells us that everything around us has an opposite, a dual force that's inseparable yet interwoven, like two sides of the same coin. Imagine for a moment that every experience, every feeling, every thought exists on a spectrum. Think of hot and cold. Are they really two different things, or is one simply the absence or presence of the other in varying degrees? The same applies to courage and fear, to love and hate. They are connected, each defining and enhancing the other, each existing to teach us something deeply profound. But here's where it becomes truly eye-opening. The law of polarity reveals that the challenges we face, the moments of pain, darkness, and struggle, are not just random obstacles. They're actually there to give shape and meaning to our joy, our light, our growth. In other words, without those darker moments, we wouldn't truly understand or appreciate the brighter ones. It's a stunning idea, almost humbling in its simplicity. Now, when you think of life through this lens, you start to see every hardship, every bit of adversity, as part of a greater balance, a necessary counterpoint. It makes you wonder if maybe we are more powerful and resilient than we give ourselves credit for. Because if we can learn to navigate these polarities, to embrace both the highs and lows, then we're not just surviving, we're truly, deeply living. And that's the invitation the law of polarity extends to us all. To not just endure life's swings, but to understand that every single one of them adds to the richness of who we are, like threads woven into the fabric of our being. Now, imagine for a moment the incredible power of understanding duality, not as two separate forces, but as two parts of the same whole. This is what the law of polarity calls integrated duality. It's a mindset shift that turns the world from black and white into something deeper, richer, layered with meaning. Think of heat and cold, often seen as opposites, right? But if you look closer, you'll see that they aren't isolated. They're points along the same temperature spectrum. Each degree from cold to warm to hot is just a progression. They blend into each other, almost indistinguishable from one degree to the next. Now, apply that to your emotions, your experiences. Joy and sorrow, not different entities but expressions on the same spectrum, rising and falling based on our circumstances, our perspective. And here's where it gets personal, because every time we face a difficult moment, we're invited to shift our perspective. Instead of resisting, we can start to see it as just one extreme of something that contains its opposite, a gateway to something more. This means that when we're in moments of darkness, that darkness isn't isolated. It's inherently connected to light, to hope, to growth. We only need to move along the spectrum, even if it's one small step, to feel the difference. But why is this important? Because life will constantly throw these dual forces at us, testing us, pushing us to see beyond just what's in front of us. It dares us to see that within every shadow lies the potential for light. That in itself is a gift. When we begin to live with this awareness, we don't get as easily lost in extremes. We find stability, a center within ourselves that understands both sides, a place where true resilience and wisdom are born. And that's the essence of integrated duality. It asks us not to resist, not to fight against what life gives us, but to embrace it, knowing that every experience is part of a grander spectrum, a wider understanding. Every high has its low, every joy has its sorrow, and both exist to help us grow into the fullest version of ourselves. So, if duality teaches us that everything exists on a spectrum, where does that leave the opposites? And why do they seem so necessary? Here's where the law of polarity reveals one of its most profound truths. Opposites actually define each other. This is the principle of interdependence. Light doesn't just exist on its own, it requires darkness to be understood, to be felt. We know love because we've encountered the sting of hatred, and we cherish warmth because we've felt the bite of cold. They don't just coexist, they shape each other. Take a moment to think about that. Imagine if you lived in a world where only happiness existed. No sadness, no loss, no struggle. It sounds like a dream, doesn't it? But without experiencing sadness, we wouldn't even recognize happiness when it arrived. It would lose its meaning, its impact. Like music without silence between the notes, it would blur together, a song without rhythm, without movement. This is the heart of interdependence. One cannot simply eliminate what they consider negative and live only in the positive. Each side gives life to the other. Think of those moments when you felt lost or uncertain. It's often in those times that we gain clarity, a renewed understanding of what truly matters to us. Those darker chapters become the backdrop against which our greatest moments of light and growth stand out. There's a wisdom here that speaks to the soul. It tells us that life, in all its contrasts, is meaningful precisely because of its dual nature. It invites us to embrace both sides, not as things to conquer or control, but as parts of a whole that help us see ourselves more clearly. Interdependence asks us to recognize that every experience is part of a delicate balance, each extreme giving depth, color, and context to the other. So, rather than seeing life's opposites as things to avoid or escape, we can start to see them as essential teachers, as mirrors that help us understand and appreciate each nuance, each sensation. And when we do, we're not just navigating life, we're truly living it, fully awake to the beauty of both light and shadow. Now, let's take this understanding of interdependence and go one step further. The law of polarity doesn't just tell us that opposites define each other. It invites us to transform one into the other. This is the power of energy transformation. It's the idea that we're not stuck with whatever state we find ourselves in, whether it's fear, doubt, frustration, because every state has an opposite within reach, waiting to be called forth. Picture this. You're in the midst of a difficult moment, maybe feeling overwhelmed or anxious. What if I told you that within that very anxiety lies the seed of peace? That within frustration, there's a path to patience. This isn't just wishful thinking. It's about realizing that each emotional state is simply one end of a spectrum. And by learning to shift our perspective, we can gradually move ourselves from one end to the other. Think of it like tuning a radio. If fear is what you're picking up, peace is on the same channel, just at a different frequency. When you focus, when you practice adjusting your mindset, you begin to turn the dial, moving away from fear and toward calm. It may not happen all at once, but with each small step, each shift in thought, you're transforming that energy. You're turning darkness into light, sadness into hope, simply by understanding that they're parts of the same whole. It's powerful, isn't it? The realization that you have the ability to alchemize your experience, to change your inner state, not by fighting it, but by guiding it along the spectrum. This is more than just a skill, it's a kind of inner freedom. Because once you know that transformation is possible, you're no longer at the mercy of life's extremes. You become an active participant in your own journey, choosing how you respond, how you evolve. So, the next time you're faced with a difficult emotion or situation, remember, you have the power to transform it. Just as night eventually turns into day, every challenging moment contains the possibility of its own opposite. The choice to shift, to find that new perspective, is yours. And that choice once made can turn your struggles into the stepping stones of growth. So, if the law of polarity teaches us to see transformation within each opposite, what does that look like in practice? Here's where changing our perspective becomes not just helpful, but essential. It's a tool for navigating life's ups and downs with purpose, allowing us to uncover the potential hidden within every experience. Think about a time when you faced a setback. Maybe it was a failed project, a relationship that didn't go as planned, or a personal goal you didn't reach. It's easy to feel like these moments are purely negative, but what if they contain a spark of something positive? By shifting our perspective, we can begin to see setbacks as setups for growth, as opportunities for insight and resilience. This isn't about pretending challenges aren't painful. It's about seeing that within the disappointment or frustration, there's a lesson, a hidden opportunity to build something new. Imagine seeing each hardship as a doorway instead of a wall. Every time we choose to look for that hidden positive, we're not just surviving adversity, we're transforming it into a powerful force for growth. It's like discovering that each drop of rain has a hidden seed of sunlight within it, waiting to bloom in time. This change of perspective gives us something even more valuable: empowerment. Instead of being pushed around by life's circumstances, we can meet them with curiosity and resilience. We begin to ask, what can I learn from this? How can I grow from this? It's a mindset that turns every challenge into a stepping stone, a building block that adds to our strength, our wisdom, our character. In practicing this, we're actively applying the law of polarity. We're choosing to focus on the potential for positive in every situation, turning life's inevitable dualities into pathways for self-discovery and expansion. And that's not just powerful, it's transformative. It's the kind of perspective that once you've tasted it, you'll never want to live without. With our understanding of perspective shifting, we come to another profound application of the law of polarity: emotional balance. You see, life will always serve up emotions on both ends of the spectrum: joy and sorrow, love and fear. But what if, instead of being thrown around by these emotions, we learn to navigate between them, consciously cultivating the opposite feeling when we need it most? Imagine that you're caught in a wave of anger or sadness. It feels overwhelming, like it's pulling you under. The instinct might be to fight it, to resist it, but that often only makes it stronger. Instead, the law of polarity invites us to recognize that, within that anger or sadness, there lies the potential for its opposite: peace, joy, contentment. It's a matter of shifting focus, of gently tuning in to what that opposite would feel like, and letting that feeling guide you back to balance. This doesn't mean ignoring or suppressing negative emotions. It means acknowledging them as natural, as valid, and then choosing to reach for something more positive. By doing this, you create an internal harmony, a resilience that isn't about denying life's harder emotions, but about embracing their place in the spectrum. It's like a tree that sways with the wind instead of resisting it, finding stability in flexibility. In those moments when we consciously choose to cultivate the opposite positive emotion, we're not just reacting to life, we're creating it. We're actively using the law of polarity to shape our inner world, to keep ourselves centered. And that's powerful because it gives us the freedom to experience life fully, without being dominated by one extreme or the other. Think of it as emotional alchemy, the art of taking the raw material of any feeling and transforming it into something balanced, something beautiful. By practicing this, we become skilled at turning life's emotional dualities into fuel for personal growth and peace. As we learn to navigate our inner world, the law of polarity offers us another vital tool: the resolution of conflicts. Now, conflict isn't just an external thing that happens with other people. It's often an internal tug-of-war within ourselves, between thoughts and emotions, desires and doubts. And just as the law of polarity teaches that opposites exist on the same spectrum, it also guides us in finding harmony between contrasting perspectives. Think of those times when you've had a disagreement, maybe with a friend, a family member, or even within your own mind. In the heat of the moment, it's easy to see each side as separate, incompatible, almost like they're worlds apart. But what if we viewed these differences not as opposing forces, but as complementary viewpoints? The law of polarity reminds us that these opposing perspectives are not irreconcilable. They are simply two sides of a broader truth. Imagine looking at a coin. From one side you see heads, from the other tails. Both are true, both are real, and both are needed to make the coin whole. In a similar way, every conflict holds within it a potential for greater understanding, a chance to bring balance by recognizing the value in both sides. By finding common ground by seeking to understand rather than to defeat the other perspective, we can transform conflict into connection. This approach isn't just about resolving disagreements with others, it's a path to inner peace as well. When we learn to honor the different voices within ourselves, the one that urges caution and the one that calls for adventure, for example, we create a harmony that transcends the need for one side to win. Instead, we integrate both perspectives, crafting a response that respects the full spectrum of our thoughts and feelings. The beauty of this practice lies in its power to transform opposition into unity. We move from seeing conflict as a barrier to seeing it as a bridge, a chance to understand more, to grow deeper, and to find balance within ourselves and with others. And in that balance, we discover a strength that only harmony can bring. Now that we understand how to harmonize perspectives and resolve conflicts, let's dive into some inspiring examples of how to use polarity to fuel personal growth. This is where the law of polarity becomes more than just a concept. It becomes a transformative practice. Think of it as an invitation to turn every experience, especially the challenging ones, into a catalyst for growth. Consider moments when life feels like it's throwing one obstacle after another your way. Maybe you're facing setbacks at work, dealing with strained relationships, or feeling lost on your personal path. These aren't easy times. But with the law of polarity, we're reminded that even within these low points, there's an inherent opportunity for something positive. It's a perspective that shifts us from asking, "Why is this happening to me?" to "What can I learn from this?" Take the example of fear. Fear can be overwhelming, paralyzing even, but polarity teaches us that fear and courage are simply two ends of the same spectrum. So, what if, instead of trying to fight the fear, we acknowledge it and then use it as a stepping stone toward courage? By recognizing the courage within the fear, we start to transform that energy, moving along the spectrum toward a place of strength. Or think of failure. Failure feels like a dead end, but when we embrace polarity, we start to see that failure isn't the opposite of success. It's part of the path to it. Every time we fail, we gain insight, resilience, and wisdom. We're being refined, shaped, and prepared for something bigger. It's as if life is saying, "Keep going, you're on the right track," even when it feels like we're moving backward. These examples remind us that every challenge holds a hidden gift, every setback a potential breakthrough. And when we approach life with this mindset, we don't just grow, we thrive. We become people who can face life's dualities with an open heart, transforming each struggle into a source of inner strength. By seeing the hidden potential within the polarities of our experiences, we realize that we are not defined by any single moment, but by how we choose to navigate them all. At this point, we begin to see the true depth of the law of polarity. It's not just about embracing opposites, but about accepting them as essential parts of life. This is where we touch on a profound idea: transcending duality. What does it mean to transcend the dual nature of existence? It means reaching a place where we're no longer resisting the so-called negative aspects of life. Instead, we see them as opportunities, as steps along the journey that lead to balance and understanding. Imagine accepting both light and shadow as necessary parts of growth. In many ways, transcending duality is like moving from black and white thinking to seeing the world in full color. We're not here to avoid the lows in pursuit of the highs. We're here to experience life in its entirety, to feel the full range of what it means to be human. This understanding of polarity frees us from the need to judge each moment as good or bad. Instead, we recognize each experience as valuable, as essential to the tapestry of our lives. Take, for instance, the concept of pain and joy. When we see them as separate, we're constantly running toward one and fleeing from the other. But when we see them as interconnected, we realize that joy often gains its sweetness from the pain we've endured. Just as a sunrise is most breathtaking after a long night, joy feels deeper and more meaningful when we've tasted sorrow. It's all part of the same journey, the same growth. Transcending duality doesn't mean we don't feel pain, sadness, or frustration. It means we embrace them as aspects of life, just as we would embrace love, peace, and happiness. We learn to sit with discomfort without being consumed by it, to acknowledge sadness without being trapped in it. And by doing so, we allow ourselves to move more freely between life's dualities, flowing with the natural rhythm rather than fighting against it. This acceptance brings a quiet strength. It teaches us that within every struggle lies the seed of triumph, within every fall the possibility of rising. In accepting the wholeness of life, the light and the dark, the joy and the pain, we find a deeper, more enduring peace, one that doesn't depend on circumstances but arises from within. And that peace, once found, becomes our anchor in a world of endless change. So here we are, at the final revelation of the law of polarity. A law that teaches us how to navigate the spectrum of existence and see the beauty in life's dualities. And as we've explored, this understanding doesn't exist in isolation. It connects with other universal principles, forming a complete picture of how we can live a life of purpose and peace. Consider how the law of polarity harmonizes with the law of vibration. which reminds us that everything, from our thoughts to the tiniest particles, is in constant motion. Polarity, then, is just a manifestation of these different frequencies, higher or lower, darker or lighter, each vibrating along a shared spectrum. And when we align ourselves with positive, higher frequencies, we naturally move along that spectrum, transforming shadows into light. Then there's the law of rhythm, the universal heartbeat that creates cycles, like the rise and fall of the ocean tides or the changing seasons. Polarity works within these cycles, reminding us that every peak is balanced by a valley, every low eventually giving way to a high. By trusting this rhythm, we find peace in knowing that no state, no challenge lasts forever. We learn to ride the waves, embracing both the highs and lows as necessary parts of our journey. Finally, the law of correspondence teaches us that what we see externally is a reflection of what exists internally. The polarities we encounter in the world mirror the polarities within ourselves. Just as we work to harmonize opposites within our minds and hearts, we bring balance to the world around us. By integrating these principles, we're not just learning about the universe, we're learning about ourselves, about how to live in harmony with everything around us. And so, in understanding the law of polarity, we gain a profound tool: the ability to see the unity within life's contrasts, to embrace both light and shadow, love and fear, success and failure, as essential parts of our growth. It's an invitation to move through life with a deep appreciation for the balance that exists within every moment. This journey doesn't end with avoiding discomfort or seeking only the positive. It continues as we embrace each experience fully, with gratitude and presence. In the end, the law of polarity reminds us that life is a dance of opposites, a beautiful spectrum of experiences that together make us whole. And once we learn to dance with it, to see each moment as part of a greater unified whole, we're truly free. Free to live, free to grow, free to become the fullest version of ourselves.